Hello and welcome back to OC Aviary. Today we're going to be looking at predator proofing and vermin proofing, bird sheds, aviaries and flights, different things in related to where you keep your birds. And that is all due to a recent event I had actually just this past weekend, which I'm going to show you shortly, which is when I had my goldfinches out in the show cages. I hadn't had them out at all this year, mainly because it was just them finishing the molt, and I'd brought them in not too long ago, so I didn't want to stress them out. Obviously goldfinches can be quite temperamental when you stress them out, and I wouldn't want to risk losing them. So they've had about 8 weeks now settling in. So I had them out in the show cages, and this is what happened. Now, as you just saw, the event that occurred was actually quite shocking and quite terrifying for me, at least. Obviously, it would be for the bird, and you're probably quite surprised to see that yourself, considering that I was stood no further than I am away from the camera now to the cages, which is about 2.5 feet, and I was just filming the cages for you guys. Actually, I was going to put them on my Instagram and on my Facebook, when out of nowhere the hawk came in and grabbed the agate goldfinch hen and nearly pulled her through the bars. Now, I'm thankful enough to say that she's doing just fine, and she is alive. As you've seen now, she isn't really showing any issues. She hasn't had any injuries. I had to check her over in case she'd been cut. Thankfully, she wasn't cut. Also, she did have a fit immediately after. She had a fit in the bottom of the cage. I quickly took her in the shed and held her just in my hands, put my hand over her head, and just held her close to me, and because I thought, well, she's most likely going to die at this point, and the best thing I can do is make sure that she is as calm as possible and she doesn't make any more further injury, because that wouldn't be nice. And obviously she's already pretty much having a heart attack just because she's been attacked by this hawk, never mind her injuring herself and just making it a whole lot worse for her. But thankfully she is fine. She's getting on now. It's 5 or 6 days later, and she isn't showing any issues, thankfully. So I'm really just quite thankful for that, that I didn't lose her. Also then, it's just something to be aware of, is that can happen, and I completely did not expect that. I never leave my birds unattended when they're out of the sheds or out of the flights, and I have them in a showcase like that, because they are so open and so easily predated on by a hawk, for example, like that. They're in a small cage. They can't get away from any further than that far from the front, and as you saw there, the hawk just got its leg straight through and pulled her to the bars. I am shocked that she didn't go out. As you can see, she was very, very close, and I think the only thing that stopped that was the hawk seeing me and realising I was there, even though I believe it probably knew I was there immediately, even before it made the attack. And if he'd have pulled any more, I think she'd have gone out the cage, and that would have been it. She'd have been on the floor even if she'd have let go, and she'd been having a fit. The hawk shot off, obviously, and I haven't seen since. It's something just to be aware of. So never ever leave your birds unattended whilst in a show cage, outside of the shed or outside of where it's safe. I never do, and I never will, but it's also something just to be aware of, that even if you're there with them, that there is the potential for something like that. Now, we're going to look at other things I do to prevent vermin and predators to come into the sheds and taking birds, harming birds, and really just being an issue. So we'll just go straight into it. I'm just going to show you a few methods that I do. Obviously, just remember that these are my opinions, and this is what I've done from experience over the past few years. I've had several issues with vermin in the past. It's not right and it's not wrong. Just remember that, and it works for me. So I'm just sharing that with you guys, and hopefully it will work for you too. Now that starts off with the floor of the flight. So as you can see, the floor is quite dirty in here at the moment. It does need cleaning. There's just an awful lot of seed. I dropped a big bucket of seed in here the other day, which is why it's quite messy. There is some leaves that have come off the branches. I've got all my canaries and the mules in here at the moment, but it's something I'm going to clean this weekend. Obviously water is going to be cleaned today. I fill that up and clean it every day. It's just they made quite a mess today. As I didn't have that full yesterday. So I have tiles, like paving slabs on the floor, and the main reason being is that it prevents any vermin coming up underneath. Obviously, as you can see here, there is just decking. However, the main area is that it's covered all of that, and there's just a slight strip there. And in the breeding season, at least, I will be just laying bricks down the side, and we shouldn't have an issue. But the reason being then is because it's just vermin proof. Vermin aren't going to be able to chew through this stone slabs. It is something to make sure you do, so I would always recommend that on the floor of your flights you have some solid base like that. I obviously have an AstroTurf cover over that. It's just mucky at the moment, which needs cleaning. You know, I've not had an awful lot of birds in here other than canaries and mules for the past week or so. So it's a big important thing that you have something solid on the floor to prevent vermin coming up underneath. You know, this works nicely for me because the aviary and all the flights are built on a decking. However, if you can put a complete concrete floor, that's even better. So the best way I've found to discourage any hawks and obviously predators from above is actually just visual blocks. So as you can see on the outside, I have a willow screening. This is actually just between all the flights anyway, because it's a visual block for the other birds when they're in the flights. But most importantly is that when we have something like a sparrowhawk in here, you know, it's going to be less likely it's going to see the bird moving, or at least we'll see something moving behind, but can't spook them as easily. So I have this, it's just willow screening across, and we have the plastic on. That's just for the moment whilst it's cold, and that's more just for draft proofing than anything else. As you can see, it's clear. I do need to replace this board. This was just temporary for the winter whilst I've got the crossbills in the outdoor flights, as they're, you know, because sort of coming into condition now, and I'm looking to condition them for the start around the middle of January. I'm looking to start breeding, so I do need to replace that, but that is more just a complete visual block so that nests can go behind it, and we won't have any issues with hawks discouraging birds off the nest. And as it goes with that, obviously I have some just bits stored in this flight at the moment, just perches, a bit of easy bed, and some sort of, you know, sales cages. Now that is really just what I do. That's all winter proofing, the plastic that isn't on in the summer. I do also have sort of the wood on the outside at the bottom. That's just for youngsters as they come to the sides, because I wouldn't want a cat or even, you know, a hawk or some other predator to take the youngster through. I do need to cover the fronts, but I usually do put it's sort of a metal sheeting across the front. It's about 6 inches high, and that's just a nice finish. But I am looking to get some sort of board and just run that straight across the front, and then it just makes it more of a sheltered and secluded area, so when youngsters are on the floor we aren't having any issues. Another thing just to point out actually is the roofing. So this is clear perspex pretty much, and the reason I have this is so that we have all the natural daylight coming through. However, it is I find that it at least blurs the vision from above, so I don't tend to get hawks attacking from above now. As you can see, it is you can see through it, but a hawk, especially with the like the gradients on it and everything, it's quite reflective, at least on the top, so that hawks won't be as easy. It won't see the birds as easily. However, I would always recommend, if you can have at least a sort of shaded area, that is good for the birds because of the sunlight, and I do put nests under there, but also is that the hawk definitely isn't going to see them below a solid sort of roof. So have that, and that just covers straight across all the back of the flights. So that is my sort of best recommendation when it comes to hawks and flights, as well as deterring cats, which obviously come to the floor when we have youngsters on the floor of the flight. So what is probably one of the most important things when keeping your birds safe and keeping them away from vermin, and actually just reducing vermin, is actually keeping everything clean, so there isn't any food which attracts the vermin in the first place. Now, a lot of people will always say that wherever there's birds, there's vermin, and that is specifically generally mice and rats. I've had issues with both in the past, mainly mice getting into feed and rats actually taking birds. So my my whole total method and the idea of what I do to reduce impact vermin, the impact they have on the birds, and ultimately try and prevent them from being here, is just cleaning everything. So this is my sort of tunnel or corridor between the flights. We have all the flight doors here. We've got the small finch shed door here, and we have like a stone path between, and here is where it usually gets full of sort of seeds and easy bed and clean outs from the birds, because I'm always spilling seed when I'm filling up the feeders in here. The water goes on the floor when I'm taking things out of that bird shed, and coming through here with a bucket of mess, really, drop bits, and it all goes there. And the last thing we want is that to be attracting any rodents and any vermin and anything that could cause any issues. So I generally clean this about once a week, just to reduce the likeliness of actually attracting some unwanted pests. And that starts off really with getting a brush, just brushing up all of the mess, getting it all into a pile. Then we get a hand brush that up. Then I get a scraper and scrape all between the tiles and the slates, really, and just removing as much as I can from there. And then I scrape that up, brush it all up, and it's all right, it's clean. And then, just to really finish it off, I get a bottle of disinfectant. I usually use it in a spray bottle when I'm cleaning and disinfecting the flies, as well as disinfecting cages and show cages and things like that. I'll just get about 1 litre made up of this. I believe what I use is called Sulflora. It's generally pet safe, so there's no harmful odours, so it's always something to take into account, is that if you are to use a disinfectant, make sure it's pet safe. Obviously the pet doesn't want to be consuming it, but the idea is that it doesn't release any harmful gas that could have an impact on your pet's health, and particularly birds in our case. So I get that and I just pour that on here. I put a little bit of water on it to make it go a little further. I generally try and make it as concentrated as possible, as recommended on the box. I pour that down here. I get a bit of water from a watering can, wash it down, and then get a brush it all over, so we've got a nice clean and disinfected surface. And then just get the watering can again and just rinse it down, so I don't really have much of the disinfectant left, and just wash all of the extra debris to one side, so I can then hand brush that up. Cleans it nicely and it works quite well, I've found. I haven't had any issue with vermin within, I would say, at least the past 2 years whilst having this sort of setup. I did have, the last issue I had was when this was actually an aviary. We had this whole back shed, so what is this small finch room is that was just a free flight aviary, and then we had a door here, and this took us into what was the outdoor flight, and then I had these three. But previous to that, the whole shed, it was a 14 by 10 aviary. We had the inside area, and then we had a really large outdoor area. And I managed, sadly I didn't realise until it was too late, is that we actually had rats underneath the shed, and they managed to chew through the bottom of the shed and get up into the flight, and they took quite a few birds, which was really quite upsetting, especially considering the birds they took as well. If a rat's going to get in, it isn't going to be going for the cheap birds, is it? Anyway, it managed to take 8 birds. It took a baby cockatiel. It was a colour I'd never bred before, a white-faced cockatiel. first baby I'd ever had of a white face, and the baby was on the perch. I think the rat climbed up the mesh and took it straight off the perch and ate its head, which was really quite a distressing sight and obviously quite an upsetting thing. It took a pair of Gouldian finches, it took a pair of violeted waxbills, I believe they were. It took a pair of yellow bishop weavers. It took one of my oldest and probably one of my best canaries I had from when I first started out with birds. Really quite an old canary. It was about 5-6 years old, this canary, but he was great. He was always singing, and sadly the rat took that bird as well. And it also took a peach-faced lovebird. That was really when I specialised in all the exotics and kept a really large amount of exotics in a one big aviary. It took quite a few, and it took them all in one night, which was the issue, is that it wasn't something where I noticed one bird was missing. It took them all in one night, and the only way that I managed to get rid of that rat was by cleaning everything down. I got a jet wash, I disinfected and sprayed everything so that any food that the rats were coming in for wasn't accessible. I took all of the birds out and moved them into the breeding shed. At the time it was nowhere near as developed as it is, so I had quite a few birds in cages, all keeping them quiet and just trying to keep them away from the rats. I disinfected everything, I cleaned everything down, and the rats obviously were still coming in. I did have poison traps down. I wouldn't recommend poison traps wherever you have other pets, especially with the birds. At least I won't be having any poison traps within this area. I will have poison traps on the outside where my birds won't get, but I will not have them in here or in the bird sheds, because the last thing I need is some bit of poison. A little bit of poison could get in, and I would hate that, to poison a bird. But obviously I look after and obviously work with. So that is one of those things as well. If you are to use rat traps, I would always recommend lethal traps. I've seen these zap boxes. I'm not keen on them. And the reason being for that is just because I find that a rat can usually quite easily tell there's something wrong, and I don't really want to be using them. And plus, it's just the sort of thing that I've seen blackbirds run through a hole thinking it's that, and it could quite easily get them. I do have not live catch traps. I did have one. I prefer to just use a standard just flip over lethal trap, and that's something that I'll just hide and put it somewhere where I know the rats are and it's out of the way of other animals like blackbirds and other things that wouldn't be an issue. Also, the issue with live catch traps is having to dispose of that. Now I do have a rifle, so I can just shoot it, but I prefer not to be honest. I'd rather just take a live catch trap and it just gets rid of them, and it's quick and it's painless, and it just it breaks the neck straight away, and we don't have any more issues with rats or vermin when they're caught in a trap like that. And it doesn't shove the issue on anyone else if you're live catching and releasing somewhere else, which is one of the reasons I don't like the humane traps and the live catch traps, just because it isn't really ideal. So that's really that. Let's just make sure everything's clean, because the main reason that birds are attracting rats is because of the excess of food which goes on the floor, and you don't even have to be keeping birds to encounter this issue. I know that my grandparents, for example, they have bird feeders in the garden, and pigeons and magpies and larger birds, they throw the food all over the floor, land straight below the feeder. Anyway, they've had rat issues in the past with rats coming and taking the food that's been scattered on the floor by the larger birds and even some of the squirrels and things like that. So it's all just about trying to reduce that food that can get to them and reduce what's attracting the rats and the vermin. Now, as we spoke about food, I would always suggest and recommend that you keep them locked up in safer areas. So I do, or at least did, used to keep them in the bird sheds or in the garage. But I now have these, and these are just plastic sort of chests. So I have my feed in here. So I've got my little bags of feed. We've got conditioning seed, egg food, pearl morbide there. We've got some linseed germination mix. And then we have some of my other bags worth of food. I have some more stored in the garage, and that's really just keeping them out of the way of vermin, and you know, so that rats and mice can't get into them as easily. In here is just more other separate things. It's all bird related mainly anyway. Other than that, I need to sort that out. I've got, you know, some bags of feed in here, and mainly just nesting supplies. So I would recommend getting some of these just plastic chests. They just work really nicely for storing feed and anything that you want to keep dry, but also out the way of mice and rats. Now, something that I learned during the really early days of bird keeping, and that was actually in particular when I used to keep and breed poultry. So I used to keep and breed rare breed chickens. I used to have some ducks as well. I used to have quail. I also used to have partridge and things like that. Was that cats are afraid of larger cats. Now, that doesn't mean go and buy a tiger to guard your birds, because it's not really feasible, is it? You know, a really large tiger, have to go through all of the issue to keep a tiger contained, where you could just spend that money on doing that. And also, it's a tiger. I mean, I'd love one, but at least not at the moment. But anyway, so I found that what works, and actually was something that you can buy, is basically, it's actually tiger feces or lion feces is generally what is sold, and zoos tend to sell this. And what they do is they dry out the feces from tigers, lions, jaguars, and much larger big cats. And actually that helps deter smaller cats, because they can smell and they can sense the larger cat, which tend to keep them away. So I've actually tried that a few years ago when I had chickens, and it actually deterred any cats that ever tried to bother them. I used to have cats that would come all of the time, and they would sit next to the fence and try to you know, just get at the chickens really, and they would watch them. The chickens would just be spooked by it. But after getting the tiger feces, and actually I put that in it was a pair of tights, I believe. Yeah, I just put in a pair of tights, or a sock will even do, and just hung that actually just on the gate of the chicken coop. And I never had any issues for about a year after that, because the smell was there of the larger cat. However, they did return about after a year, once the smell had diminished and any of the hormones. But it also worked for foxes, because I never had any issues with foxes. Never even saw a fox near the chicken coop, even when the chickens were quite clearly there, and they were being you know, a bit louder at night. Still never had issues with them until that the tiger poo and actually wore off the scent, and all the hormones had disappeared, which is you know, it worked really quite well. So I would recommend buying some of that. I do need to source some. I used my last load probably about 8 months ago, and it's something that I found worked quite nicely and quite well for me. Might not work for you, but generally you'll find that it probably should, as it's what, you know, it was the reason it was being sold. Otherwise it's just would have become compost and manure. So if you can, and you can get some access to big cat feces, then it is something to definitely consider having. It is quite a strong smell at first, or especially if it's fresh, because it's just mainly just decaying meat matter. However, it worked really nicely for me and deterred cats. Other people have different suggestions. Now, I'm only going to suggest the humane suggestions, because I've seen, at least on a recent post on Facebook, asking how to do it. There were some suggestions that definitely can't be promoted and shouldn't be done, because it would be animal abuse, and that is obviously something that we don't want. And so what I would suggest as well is, if not doing that, some people had suggested actually using CDs, so old CDs, and you just tie them on a stick with some string, and actually just the CD blowing in the wind and the reflectiveness tends to deter cats. They don't like it. That was generally the main two methods which probably work best. It was the animal feces, the big cat feces, and the CD reflectiveness. Other than that, there wasn't really many that were something that I could promote at least, and I mean I wouldn't recommend doing. Definitely not, because it is harming the cats, and I always think of it as if I had a cat and that happened, then I would be very annoyed, and obviously if my birds, as much as we don't let our birds out, if my birds are causing someone an issue, I'd rather someone deter them in another way rather than harming them or causing them any distress. I would rather just deter them rather than have to deal with them when they're there. So that is my best 2 recommendations for cats. Something I've been made aware of was weasels and stoats and sort of ferret-like animals. That's at least in the UK. I hear people having stoats get into their flights. I don't know how that would go for the rest of the world. I do know I have some viewers. I have some viewers from Saudi Arabia. I have some viewers from sort of the Middle East. We've got Turkey. We have some American viewers. But anything that is like a ferret will take birds quite happily. And I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly how to do that because I haven't got experience in that. I don't have issues with them because I live in a more built up area than rural next to fields. But I think that probably what I would suggest doing is just a humane trap, live catch trap, and you just have to relocate that animal several miles away. Other than that, depending on what the law is, I don't believe that they could be killed. I mean, it might be dependent, such as I believe at least gamekeepers have a sort of permission to kill stoats and animals like that if they're causing distress or issues to the populations. But it isn't something I recommend doing. I would more just look at how to do that on the internet, because I can't give you a good suggestion, considering I haven't actually got experience with those animals myself. Now, before I end this video, I wanted to just talk to you about a few different things that are coming on the channel very soon. So first off, we actually announced on the Natives Norwich group on Facebook a few days ago now that we will be doing Zoom calls to breeders and other fanciers, and really the aim of those is to get videos out there which will be on my channel and also promoted on the Natives of Norwich page, where we're talking to breeders with many years of experience about all sorts of things, how they got into the hobby, and different tips they would give, how to breed specific birds. Maybe they've had success in breeding something that not many people have done. So that's definitely something that I wanted to bring up. Next would be that I am currently in the process of writing an interview for the Cage and Aviary Birds magazine. So over the next few weeks at least, probably before Christmas or at least into probably the new year, you will see some articles in the Cage and Aviary Bird magazine written by myself, and that goes from things like how I started in the hobby and how everything's gone like that, to the YouTube channel which you're seeing and you're obviously on now, and then just other things and just different tips that I would say. So make sure that you at least have a look at those. The Cage and Aviary Bird magazine can be bought from many different news agents. I generally would buy it from WH Smith, at least that's in England. I know there's one in town for me, and I'm probably going to try and get a subscription to it as the weekly editions, so I can see those every week. And I'll also obviously be looking at other things that people have wrote about. And so if you'd like to get the Cage and Aviary Bird magazine, then the link is in the description, and you can obviously visit the website as well, but I will have some articles in there written by yours truly. Now, one more thing to mention is that I am going to be getting a product very shortly, or at least a product line in from Italy that isn't currently available in the UK, and I will be testing that quite vigorously, and very very well against other products that are on the market for birds, such as vitamins and medications. So I'm going to be testing that out over the next few weeks on all the different birds, and so most of the products do apply. However, there's some I believe that are more regional, such as like a mosquito repellent. We don't really have mosquitoes in this country, at least. But either way, we're going to be trialing those products, so make sure that you are you're watching, and you will be able to buy those at a sensible price in the UK, and there will be definitely something that you definitely will be needing to consider. I'll be telling you guys my honest opinions of the products, because I wouldn't want you to be buying anything that I didn't believe in and that I was promoting. So you'll see that over probably in a few videos time, and I will be dropping it into other videos, just saying what I'm currently trialing, and really just the results. We'll do one big video on it on this certain product line, because I do think that these could be a really big medication source in the UK. I do think it would be very beneficial as well, considering that they're made from much different sort of chemicals and natural products, which would definitely be bringing different things into the birds, so that if there was any resistance. But more about that in a future video. So that brings us to the end of this video. So a bit of a different video today. We haven't really looked at a lot of birds, but what we have looked at is all the prevention and the methods to deal with predators and vermin, things that obviously have a big impact on a bird's health, and obviously the birds in general, and just keeping everything nice and clean. Now, if you have enjoyed this video, please do leave a like. It's great to see that you guys are enjoying the videos, and I do like to make sure that my content is something that you guys want to see. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. I know that for a few older viewers that I've had questions whether you have to pay for a subscription. So no, subscribing to my channel is completely free. All you have to do is press the subscribe button below this video, and that will automatically subscribe you to my channel. All the videos are free to view, and there is no costs affiliated with that. And obviously, if it does say just sign up to YouTube, all you need is an email, and it's completely free to do, and you can just become have a YouTube channel, and you can watch all videos, you can subscribe to other channels, and you get recommended videos. So that's just something I want to make you aware of, as I was asked the question by several people within the past few weeks, whether it does cost to subscribe to the channel or not. And finally, please do share the video with someone. It's important. I do like to make sure that my videos are getting out there, people are seeing them, especially for some people who are unaware of different things to do within the hobby, and actually unaware of the reaches of the hobby. And please make sure you hit the notification bell, as that will notify you every single time I upload. Generally, we're uploading videos once a week on a Saturday morning at 10 AM. Sometimes they do come out a little bit later, depending on any technical issues I've had. Had some technical issues with YouTube over the past few weeks, and that has mainly just been due to, I believe it's Wi-Fi connections and videos not processing, as I have had some rather long editing processes to go through. So yeah, please, I hope you enjoyed this video today. Make sure you do all the latter: subscribe, like, share the video, and hit the notification bell. I'll see you in the next video.